Good day, everybody, and today we're going to talk about a topic which is renting out your property in Johor Bahru because recently we get a lot of questions, inquiries about people who buy property in Johor for investment. And of course, one of the big components of investment property is your ability to rent out this property. So we're going to go through in detail how does the renting process in Johor Bahru work today. So first up, what are the key things that you should know? So number one is that the typical lease tenure or rental tenure in Malaysia is actually 1 year, and you may have a 1 year plus 1 year arrangement. That is quite common. But unlike Singapore, where generally most landlords try to go for 2 years and can get 2 years in Singapore, but in Malaysia the typical arrangement is only 1 year. Okay, so what are the deposits that you can collect as an owner, right, or as a landlord? You will get 2 months deposit for a 1 year lease, which is higher than Singapore, right? Singapore typically you get 1 month per year, right? So a 1 year lease, Singapore get 1 month, 2 year lease in Singapore get 2 months. But in Malaysia, right, for a 1 year lease, you still get 2 months deposit. On top of that, you get a 0.5 month deposit or half month deposit for water and electricity deposit, utilities deposit. So total, you get 2.5 months security deposit for a 1 year lease in Malaysia. So including your first month rental, right? In all, you should collect 3.5 months from the tenant, which is 2 months security deposit, 0.5 months for utilities deposit, and the first month advance rental for the first month rental of your lease. You may ask the question, Ryan, why is there a utilities deposit? Because in Malaysia, what happens is that the account, the water and electricity account, will still be under the landlord's name. In most cases, for residential property, right, the name of the utilities account is still in the owner's name. It's quite troublesome to change the name in Malaysia, right? Unlike Singapore, where SP services, you can do this quite easily online, right? But for Malaysia, changing of utilities account is a more troublesome process. So in most cases, this remains in the landlord's name. So because of that, you collect a half month, 0.5 month deposit for water and electricity in case the tenant doesn't pay. You can always monitor the payment, right, through online because you can register an account online to monitor your utilities. So in case tenant doesn't pay, you can chase the tenant, right, and make sure they pay. But in any case, the 0.5 months is a reserve to protect you for this. So how about commission? Right, a property agent in Malaysia will collect 1 month commission for a 1 year lease, right? So 1 month commission for a 1 year lease. It is higher than Singapore, right? Singapore for 1 year you only collect half month, but in Malaysia is 1 month for 1 year lease, right? But if you do get a 2 year lease or longer, right, it's only up to a maximum of 1.3 months, right? So there is a cap, right? And the cap is not very high. So in most cases, you will be paying 1 month uh, commission to the agent for a 1 year lease, right? If there is a renewal, right, and you intend the agent to manage the property for you, right, you do pay agent at renewal, which is typically 0.5 months for another 1 year renewal, right, similar to Singapore. But you can also choose to self-manage the tenant, right? Some owners in Singapore do this. But the idea is that if you self-manage a tenant, then definitely the agent will not be there to handle some of the issues, right? But you can then save on renewal if you choose to do so. So in a typical tenancy agreement, what happens? So the water and electricity is paid for by the tenant, including internet as well if they apply for internet. So water, electricity, internet, right? These are utilities. These are paid by the tenant. Owner is responsible to pay for maintenance fees and property taxes, if any. In the case of room rentals, this may differ. Typically for room rentals, similar to Singapore, an owner will probably include the water electricity in their rental, right? So you mark up your rental a bit to cover water and electricity for room rental purposes, right? Because normally there's room rental, there's multiple tenants in multiple rooms. Then of course, like co-living, right? That is most likely better to factor the utility cost into the rental itself. Most tenancy agreements also have clauses to include like minor repairs below 200 ringgit or 300 ringgit are covered by the tenant, right? And of course, bigger repair costs or major items to the structure, then probably that has to be paid for by the landlord or negotiated with the landlord for the repair cost or replacement cost of the bigger items. Similar to Singapore, the deposits, the security deposits, the 2 months security deposit plus the half month utilities deposit, they are refundable to the tenant at the end of the lease. Of course, minus repairs, minus reinstatement costs. If the tenant didn't clean or didn't forgot to pay some balance utility bills after they move out, before they move out, right? You can use this to offset all these costs before you refund the difference to the tenant. So how does this renting process work in Malaysia? Very similar to Singapore. So an agent will take your property, take some photos, go online, post it in some property portals or through some agent network that they have. Once they get the tenant, they'll bring the tenant for viewing. So it's important that your keys are given to the agent, right? You ideally you give to exclusive agent is good, but I mean, yeah, you can use 2, 3 agents if you have to. And you take the agent will have then if the tenant agrees to the rental rate, there will be a offer to rent, right? And this will be signed by the landlord, and they will immediately then proceed to the tenancy agreement. Very similar to Singapore, not much difference in the process. Both parties sign the tenancy agreement, and once the deposits are paid, right, and then you can then arrange for the move-in period. So should the unit be fully furnished or partially furnished or not furnished at all? Now, definitely in Malaysia, it's preferable for the units to be fully furnished. When we say fully furnished, means at minimum, the large items are like furniture, dining table, sofa, bed, right? These are there, and of course you have to put the lights and the curtains. And the fans, right? And of course, if kitchen, all this should be ready, right? You don't have to provide anything more than that. I mean, if you want to provide bed sheets or cutlery sets or artwork, I mean, this is really up to you. But I mean, at minimum, the big cost items should be there. Some of the personal items, like I said, bed sheet, all these can be provided by the tenant themselves, right? But definitely, like I said, lighting, fans, curtains, right? Major furniture such as bed, mattress, sofa, TV table, TV, fridge, washing machine, all this should be provided by the landlord. I mean, that's our definition of fully furnished. There are, in some cases, tenants who are typically these are the expatriates, right? The Angmo or the Japanese, Korean. They may have their own furniture, but again, in many cases, they don't because it's quite far for their own country. So it's you have to, as an owner, I think, be prepared to prepare all of these for full furnishing purposes. More so if you have a landed property, then of course landed property, and if you bought a brand new landed property, then of course your renovation cost is much higher because landed property is big. I think this is something I tell a lot of owners in other videos. If you bought a landed property for purposes of rental, I think do take note that your upfront costs are higher because of the reno works, and simply the preparation for landed cost is more because landed property is simply bigger, right? Other advice that I will give is use a proper registered agent in Malaysia. I mean, in Malaysia, there are what we call unregistered agents. So ideally, use a legal registered agent. You can find them on the website over here, right? Where to check whether this agent is registered or not, right? And typically for the big companies, they are registered, right? Even today in Singapore, in JB, some of the big Singapore agencies are there, like ERA. They are in Johor today, so you can find an ERA agent, and more the bigger brands, of course, provide you better sense of security in that sense. The other thing is, of course, you have to find out whether this agent specializes in that particular area, because Johor Bahru is still a very large place, and because of traffic, right, not every agent can do everywhere. So I mean, it's better to get an agent that specializes in that location, even better specialized in that building, right? That particular building, whether it's for sale or for rent, right? Of course, building specialists are the best because or they do a few buildings in the area, right? So they know the project well. You can check with the agent whether how well they know about it, or see if they have similar listings online that can tell you whether the agent is a specialist or not, right? So sometimes you can say, oh, my friend recommend this agent, but if the agent don't do your area, then no point, right? The agent has to do your area, otherwise no point, right? Like if you say agent in Austin, very unlikely can do Putri Harbour, right? An agent in Pasir Gudang very unlikely can do JB City, right? Or even if they say yes, actually they are just trying their luck. They may not be very good in the target area that you're giving them. Okay, what kind of rental rates should you expect? Now, if you're buying a property in Johor Bahru today, I mean, generally you should be able to get a gross rental yield of 4% or higher, right? In some cases, 5% also possible, depending on the unit that you buy and the location, right? But definitely 4% in general. Of course, there are some exemptions cases where you may end up with 3% or lower, especially if you buy landed or very big condos, right? Maybe you will get below 4%, right? But generally for a typical apartment condo in JB, you should hit 4% or higher at today's prices, right? So what does that translate to? Let me give you some charts here to give you an idea. I generally define the rentals into 3 categories. Number 1 is the CBD of Singapore, Johor Bahru City Centre. Anything that's near to the immigration, to custom, right, to the future MRT, right, you will get a higher rental rate. primarily because these are people, there are people who rent here because they want to get to Singapore easily. Either they can walk, right, to the immigration. So that's why rental rates here are higher, right? And because of course it's the Johor Bahru City Centre itself, which is the most so-called most prime location in JB. Now, if you look at rental rates in the suburbs, right, which are further away, these are places like Bukit Indah, Austin, Skudai, outskirts of JB, the suburbs of JB, we're talking about half an hour typically or more, maybe 15-20 minutes at minimum, right? Further away from JB town center, the rates are generally lower. Of course, there are tenants here as well. This could be locals who work in Malaysia or those who work in Singapore but with a lower rental budget, right? You have people who rent this area as well, right? And of course, I have another category, which is the landed property. Landed property has a different price scale on itself because of the way landed property is, right? And most landed properties that we're referring to here are in the suburbs, right? Again, half an hour or 45 minutes away from town, right? And you will see some range in terms of pricing, especially for bungalows, because bungalows also differ a lot in terms of the size of the bungalow, then the prices may change quite a fair bit. And of course, if you see the rental rates here, why there's some range? Because they're always affected by things like the size, the actual size of the unit, actual furnishing condition of the unit. Of course, high quality furnishing you can get better price. The views, better view can get better price. Floor height of the unit, right, facing, and actually the general condo itself also plays a part. Some condos which are much nicer, you can get a better rate. Some condos which are not so nice, of course, you can get so nice rate, right? So these are some of the variables that affect the rental rate of your property in the end. Now, let me share my own experience recently. I have recently in Johor, two of my properties had handover back to me and from my previous tenants, and I had to rent them out again. So let me share with you my experience being in August, September of 2023. So the first property I'm going to talk about is my Horizon Hills Intermediate Terrace. Now, this is a property initially I used to stay in myself. I bought it in 2014. Many years ago, and I actually it was my own stay when I used to stay in JB, right, with my family, right. This is where we stay in Horizon Hills, right. It was not really our primary home because we still stay in Singapore, right. So we in out quite a fair bit. But after COVID, when my children were born, right, I decided to rent out this property. So this tenant was my initial tenant was a Singaporean, and he has moved out. So I got back the keys, clean up a bit, touch up some of the things that he didn't really repair during his stay. And within the same month, I think only within 2 weeks, my agent, the same agent that actually found a tenant for me, found another tenant already, which is a local Malaysian doctor. Husband and wife are doctors, right, with one child, and they are taking up the unit in the next 2 weeks, right. I'm going to move in. We're just pending some minor repairs, and they will move in. So at the same rental rate, which is 3,300 ringgit per month for an inter-terrace in Horizon Hills. Now, 3,300 ringgit per month is maybe slightly above average in terms of the rental rate for an inter-terrace in Johor. Reason being because my house, I did it nice. I won't say very, very nice. I used to work interior design, so I know how to use minimal budget to make a house look good. So this is right, hardly any marketing. I don't even think my agent posted online. There was no online posting. They just share within the listing within their own network agents, and they were able to find a tenant very quickly. Came for viewing once the house was clean, and then immediately the tenant said yes. I think it was only the second viewing, only 2 viewings. Then I agreed on the second tenant, and we took the tenant immediately. So rental market in Johor today is quite strong. I think a lot of agents are fighting for this thing. I know some of you may not believe me when I say this, and I get this question a lot. Oh, JB can rent now, all this. I think right now, I think there's a bit under supply situation, right, in a sense, right, because we have a lot of strong demand spillover from Singapore rents are still quite high, and even if the Singapore market is weakening, right, I think they will still remain quite elevated versus Johor. So in recent months, of course, rentals in Johor have been doing quite well. A lot of owners have been able to raise the rental or at least maintain fairly high rent compared to pre-COVID era even. So that's my first case example for Horizon Hills. The second unit which I have is actually my Grand Medini studio. I have a studio apartment in Medini, right? It's a small unit of 517 square feet, right? A studio apartment with a balcony, fully furnished. And my previous tenant stayed in this house, I think 2.5 years. We did a 6-month extension. Yeah, so 2.5 years, I think this tenant finally moved out. He used to work in Singapore, and then now he's going to move in his family member in other units elsewhere. So he moved out, and we have and then I gave the key to my agent on I think within 3 days he found a new tenant, right? Even at one viewing close, the new tenant is a Malaysian local working in EduCity, right? In the education industry. So I managed to raise the rent to 1,300 ringgit per month. I think that works out to about, yeah, probably 4 point something percent. I haven't calculated for sure, but 1,300 ringgit per month definitely is higher than my previous rental, because my previous rental was renewed since before COVID one, so maybe a bit low, right? So yeah, 1,300 ringgit per month. And yeah, I'm moving in soon. I think in the next 14 days, next 2 weeks as well. As we're also doing some minor cleaning, some minor repairs to the unit, just some touch up, and the tenant move in. So you can see again. I think this my agent also didn't put any listing online. They just reach out to whatever existing clients that they had, right? And then they can find a tenant quite quickly, right? And that's what happened when the market is hot, right? And which is it's pretty hot in JB right now. So yeah, so very minimal effort to find a tenant in Johor today. I mean, I think a lot of agents if you speak to, they are quite optimistic about your chances for rental in JB today, especially if you are nearer to immigration. I think quite high demand because a lot of people go to work in Singapore. Last but not least, I want to add a comment, right? I know some of you may be doing research after this video to find out what are the rents like. You may go online to pages such as Property Guru, iProperty Malaysia to check how are the rent rates are. Well, there are many listings. I just want to warn you that a lot of these listings are what we call fake or phishing listings, right? They may put a number or a rate that is not so accurate, could be usually low, lower to try and attract you, and they may actually not have the listing on hand, right? It's a very bad practice. I mean, even in Singapore, this practice occurs to some level. Fake listings or duplicate listings, right? You can call to test it out, right? But I think there's a lot of fake listings online in Malaysia right now. I think it's not a good thing. Definitely, I don't know how the property portals are going to clean it up, right? But definitely a lot of fake listings online create false impressions sometimes in terms of what rates are like. And a lot of agents don't check properly what they post and before they post, right? And a lot of errors in their listings, on their online listings. But yeah, I mean, just such a side note, side advice. Before I end this video. So I hope this video was useful to you. If you have any questions about how the rental process looks like in Malaysia, do drop me a comment in this video below. Do like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed my content today. I'm happy to entertain any questions about rentals in Malaysia and why you should buy a property in Johor if you have to. I think the big catalyst, like what I shared many videos earlier, is that MRT is coming from Woodlands to JB in 3 years' time, and I think that is a game changer that will change the property market landscape in JB. So thank you very much and see you guys. Bye bye.